Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dawn of Drones podcast. I'm Dawn Zohar, your host and the CEO of P3 Tech Consulting. We are continuing an incredible month dedicated to global industry leaders, and we kicked it off last week with our sponsor of the month, Mission Go. So thank you, Mission Go. And if you missed that episode with Chris Corgnati, the president of Mission Go, check it out. If you haven't subscribed to DroneLife TV on their YouTube channel, do so, and you'll always get notifications of our next episode. But today, what better guest to have than Zohar Halachmi? He is the CEO and president, I butchered your name, I realize that, Halachmi, of D-Fend Solutions. We've been talking to D-Fend for a little bit now. This is part 3 of 3 of an incredible series dedicated to D-Fend's very unique cyber counter UAS solution. And so, Zohar, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yes. We've had, let me think about this. We had Asaf Mansa, your CTO, on the show previously. We had Gabriel Bendheim, who is your pre-sales manager, and he walked us through how, as a practical matter, you deploy all the different versions of your solution. That was wonderful. And, you know, today we all have the fortunate opportunity to speak with Zohar, who, when you think of an organization, he's at the tippy top as the CEO, also one of the co-founders. So it's wonderful to have you with us here today, Zohar.
Thank you again. Wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So what we're going to do to kick this off is we have a really great video of Enforce Air, which is the D-Fend's premier cyber counter UAS solution. We're going to go ahead and roll that first, and then we're going to break it down.
D-Fend Solutions Enforce Air is an advanced autonomous counter-drone system which takes control over rogue commercial drones and lands them safely in a designated safe zone without affecting legitimate drones and without interfering with other communication signals such as Wi-Fi and GPS. Enforce Air offers the ultimate in operational flexibility. System assembly is quick and easy. Readiness is achieved within minutes. The system's core elements can be easily transferred, mounted and configured to help maintain continuity while on the move. Enforce Air is now operational and monitoring the area for any rogue drones. 2 unauthorized drones enter the defined pre-protected zone, immediately triggering an alert from the system. The unauthorized drones' GPS locations are identified, as well as their home locations, which indicate the pilot's locations at the time of the drone's takeoff, helping law enforcement or special forces to find the pilots and prevent future incidents. Enforce Air initiates and executes the mitigation process for each of the rogue drones. Enforce Air's takeover technology is activated, and the 2 pilots lose communication signals. They cannot control their drones or re-establish the connection between the drones and the remote controls. Both drones have been taken over and rerouted by Enforce Air to the designated safe landing zone. Both drones land safely, ready for collection and inspection at the predefined landing point. With Enforce Air, D-Fend Solutions safely ensures the smooth flow of communications, commerce, transportation, and everyday life.
All right, very good. That was so excellent. We are going to talk about this in great detail. But before we do, I really want to kind of back up for a second because, you know, we've had so many different folks on this show, you know, drone manufacturers, operators. We had, as I mentioned, 2 of your other amazing, you know, collaborators at D-Fend, right? Part of your company. Let's talk about the threats. We kind of talked about that a little bit before, but I think it's really important for context to appreciate, what kind of brought you into this field to launch D-Fend Solutions. Like what threats were you concerned about?
I'm entrepreneur. That's what I do. So every time I look what my next challenge is going to be, I'm one of these entrepreneurs that looking for a problem which need a solution to solve, and that's exactly what happened over here. So the drone market is amazing. It's really growing very, very quickly. We use drones in various ways, and they are great. But bottom line, we need to verify that we have this type of growth in a safe way. And that's exactly actually what brought me over here to have this type of company. We're looking for a way at the end, supporting this type of growth and help this drone adoption by providing a solution at the end, or a technology which enables to do that safely. And that's really what brought me over here to do that.
Well, Zohar, we talk about this so many times. Companies create a solution in search of a problem. I love that you started with the problem statement, right? Like, because the drone industry, as you mentioned, it has, I would say, exponentially grown over the last several years, right? I think you would agree with that. The technology keeps improving, and of course, the regulatory aspect of this, which will really enable repeatable and scalable operations, it's moving forward. Maybe not as fast as we all would like, but it's moving forward. And so let's talk about that, right? Because when you think about enabling technologies for the drone industry, in my mind, in my opinion, counter UAS is a critical enabling technology, because we also talk about the clueless, the careless, the criminal, and frankly, I've added a fourth C, right? The combatant, because we've now seen, on the battlefields in Ukraine, due to the Russian incursion, we've seen a flood of commercial and do-it-yourself drones on the battlefield in numbers and ways that we've not historically seen in the past. And so, can you walk us through, that problem statement, or how, what are the threats that you're seeing out there? Because I know that's something D-Fend Solutions is constantly looking at.
First, when we say drone incident, each one of us has a little bit of a different type of picture in the head. Yeah. So there are really different types of verticals and needs for this type of solution like what we provide. And let me just give you some examples. I think that the most obvious one, that's because that's the one in the news right now, airports. It's really nice to fly drones, but it's really dangerous to fly them in their aircrafts. And sometimes you actually at the end need to really shut down this type of airports just because we have a drone over there. So one place and one type of threat that we need to deal with is protecting airports and aviation from this type of drones. That's one part. Another type of vertical, which is in the news all the time, are military drones. So we just read right now and actually see pictures as well of drones flying all over Europe, in Ukraine. And drones are being used in different type of military incidents and environments. And this is one of these locations that we need to see how we protect and help over there as well. That's, let's call it, the second type of vertical. Another one are smugglers. And smugglers can be from over the border, where they smuggle different types of narcotics, for example, or even people. And they use drones to try to bypass and avoid different types of law enforcement over there. And on the other side of that are prisons. Our drones right now are probably the most efficient way to smuggle narcotics, mobile devices, weapons into prisons. All of these type of locations and environments need some type of solution for that to protect from these type of drones. Another one of VIP protection, whether these are VIP, presidents and politicians on one hand, and even the Pope, where we actually really saved the Pope from a drone incident a year ago. So that's another part. Critical infrastructure. Think about nuclear plants. Think about power stations. All of these type of locations, which needs to have these type of solutions. Law enforcement. Mexican cartels right now are using drones to really bomb law enforcement in Mexico. And you need to help those type of law enforcement people as well. Now, I'll try to take a little bit different angle right now. Think about stadiums and sports events and all of those type of locations where all you're looking for is actually IP protection. You would like to verify that nobody really going to take pictures or videos of what's happening over there. And that's a place needs this type of counter-drone solutions as well. And maybe
Yes.
I'm going to when that's going to be my last one, sorry, that's the disaster management type of locations, which has this kind of need as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was going to say, Zohar, for those of you that missed our clubhouse last week, go check that out on replay because we talked about the disaster management situation. But I also want to highlight here this slide that we had up because you mentioned airports, Zohar. And this was an incident that occurred just this summer. So just a couple months ago, really, at Reagan Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. So can you tell us a little bit about this one? Because I think this is it's just a real example of something that happens, sadly, too frequently at our airports.
First, I must admit that we don't have a lot of information about that event, but what we do know, and that's a public information.
Yep.
The date was August 12, and there were over 90 flights that had to be diverted due to this event. And again, this is the most secured air zone in the US. This is probably the most secured airport in the US, in the middle of DC. So, think about 90 flights that had to really land in a different place, and think about the impact that had. And this is from about 45 minutes type of disruption. It's really short. So that's the impact this type of activities has on airports.
Wow, you're absolutely right. Washington D.C., since 2001 and 9/11 has been locked down that airspace. And, here's another slide that talks a little bit about some of these different areas that you just mentioned where you're seeing constant threats. So just want to keep that up for a second. And really, this is kind of the tip of the iceberg when you think about everything that's just happening out there. By the way, everybody, I feel like it was in a Soft's previous podcast. So check out both of those previous D-Fend Solutions series shows. But we talked about your website and the incredible incident tracker that you have there. I love that you put that together.
Thank you. We invest a lot in our website, and we invest a lot in trying to actually, at the end, bring all of this information into one place where people just can go and use it as a source of information. And the tracker is only one part of that. But yes, please, I really invite everyone to use it. It's a great tool over there.
Yes, and I know I wrote an article about D-Fend. I believe DroneLife published that, where we talked about that incident you mentioned with the Pope. Really significant. In fact, Inside Unmanned Systems magazine also I just got the hard copy, Zohar. I didn't get a chance to tell you the counter UAS article where I featured some of what D-Fend is doing in that magazine. Just came out today. I just got the copy, so really exciting. So Zohar, we have a pretty good overview of the threats, right? What are the main challenges then and problems that you aim to solve with Enforce Air specifically?
So what we actually at the end again try to do is to enable this type of growth of drones and to be able to use them in a safe way, and to allow all of us at the end use these type of drones, continue to grow and the growth of that, but do that in a safe way. Now, we do have to remember that in all of those type of locations as well, you have friendly drones. And you need to actually verify that you're going to deal with the hostile ones, but still leave all the other ones flying around over there. So it's not just protecting us and verify that we're going to use that safely, it's also verifying that we're going to continue using what we already have over there while we're protecting ourselves. And that's example to one of the challenges that we need to deal with as well.
All right, excellent. We're going to get into kind of the nuances of your cyber solution and how it works. But before we do that, I really just to foot stomp this. We saw that cool slide with all the different threats that are out there. What tangible threats does the system, Enforce Air, defend against specifically?
At the end, if you try to look at all of these type of incidents, all of them are coming from two different types of drones: commercial drones or DIY, do-it-yourself type of drones. Commercial drones are drones that you can buy on Amazon. All you need is an internet connection and a credit card, and that's all. These type of drones have the ability right now to fly in any type of weather. They can fly sometimes even up to 5 miles from the remote control. They can carry up to 12 kilograms on them, which is huge. So these are really very, very nice type of tools, but if you have them in the wrong hands, you can have a really big type of effect, which nobody really wants. And that's one part. The other DIY, do-it-yourself drones, most of them, if not all of them, are made from off-the-shelf components. Again, all you need to have is an internet connection and a credit card, and you can build yourself a drone. These type of drones are exactly these type of incidents that we just saw before. So at the end, what I described are coming from these two, and that's what we are focusing on.
Yeah, we're absolutely seeing an like I said earlier, exponential growth of drones being used across the board, not just in domestic locations globally, but on battlefields ever increasingly. And so you kind of alluded to this, but I want to now get into the nuances of Enforce Air and what exactly is unique about the Enforce Air, counter UAS solution. How does it differ from what I would call conventional counter UAS technologies?
So I think that we need to start, or the first step over there is to understand the problem. And we define the problem set a little bit differently. So if most, if not all of the other solution providers consider drones to be flying objects, which you need to take down from the sky, we consider drones to be viruses, just viruses with wings. So what we actually developed is an antivirus. That's all. The same antivirus we all have on our computers. Just in this case, we have antivirus against drones. That's what we do. That's what makes us unique. Now, if you look at other solutions, and again, while they consider drones to be flying objects, what they try to do is they use the same kind of technique to take them down from the sky, like kinetic solutions, like jammers, all of those. And we just took this type of cyber solution or antivirus to deal with that. And that's really what makes us unique.
All right, very good. And just to highlight, we have this slide up here, showing some of the things that Zohar just said about traditional counter UAS and how D-Fend Solutions differs from that. So I think that's a great slide to really just bring home those points. So let's talk about, as a practical matter, right? So folks are out there using your solution. What integration capabilities does Enforce-Air possess that benefit the specific sectors, such as military, special forces, law enforcement, national security organizations, with their existing infrastructure and systems?
Well, let's first understand why we need integration. But that's really depending on the different environments you have over there and the scenarios. So in some of the cases, it's a standalone type of solution, and that's the only solution available over there and protecting the environment. But in some of the cases, you would like to utilize something which is called layer defense, where
Yes.
we actually integrate different type of solutions to deal with the threat in layers, a little bit like an onion. When you try to deal with that, what you want to have are two things. The first one is the ability at the end to integrate our solution with other C2, command and control systems. So that's one part, this open architecture that we developed from the beginning, under the understanding that we need to allow other C2 systems to control the system and manage the environment from there. The second part of that is an open API that allows us to connect to other sensors and other effectors over there. So for example, if part of this layer defense, you also have kinetic solution after that, then we have the ability to connect ourselves with that. And that's exactly what we have at the end. Open architecture on one hand and APIs on the other to connect with C2 systems and other sensors.
Yeah, we talked about this, Zohar, in Clubhouse. I think that's really crucial because, the military has recognized, at least in the United States, and I think globally, that kind of wedding yourself to one solution, isn't helpful. To have an open system architecture, what the Department of Defense here is calling MOSA, Military Open Systems Architecture, is really key. So you can kind of plug and play, right? Like you need to be able to pick up, if one thing goes down, you need to be able to pick up something else, and they need to be kind of networked and connected to each other so you can still carry on that mission. So really, I think that's significant that, you have this open systems architecture and you can integrate into so many different systems. In fact, one of the great questions we had, I think, in Clubhouse was, what about remote ID? Everybody's talking about remote ID. As you know, in the United States, just about now we're in a window of where manufacturers are supposed to be incorporating it into their hardware, but drone operators don't have to buy these drones technically and to fly them until next year. But tell us about remote ID and how you've integrated that into Enforce-Air.
So remote ID is an important type of piece. It's part of this, let's call it again, the drone society. It's there to help us to verify that drones are doing what they're supposed to do and are not doing what they're not supposed to do. And we have this type of capability already in the system. It's actually being used even in some of these type of use cases or places where remote ID is already active. So yes, remote ID is there, and I believe we're going to see it in the US as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting, Zohar, because I think, obviously when Congress and the US required the Federal Aviation Administration to have a remote ID capability, they were thinking domestic. But, now that we've seen a flood of commercial off-the-shelf and, as you said, DIY drones on the battlefield, I mean, and even over the water, right? I think I saw a fleet or a significant ship being blown up in the Black Sea recently by some small drones. This remote ID capability it's different than the traditional military IFF, right? Identify friend or foe. And so you're going to see this remote ID capability required both for military and commercial or civilian users. And I think that's really key. But kind of getting back to those military users, when you look at the military, what motivates them, do you think, to adopt a new kind of generation counter UAS solution like enforced air, as opposed to the traditional technologies that they've been using, some of the things we saw on the earlier slide, like jamming or kinetic options?
So there are two things over there. First, traditional technologies works great. Amazing technologies, but they were developed from the beginning to solve a different problem. Identify MiG and F-16s flying in the air on one hand, and then mitigating this type of threat. I assume that you can use a missile against the drone as well. I'm not so sure that that's the most efficient, effective, and really that's what you want to use against $1,000 flying object.
Right.
And yes, you can try and jam it as well, but then you're probably going to lose the ability to know what's really going to happen. So the collateral damage that these type of traditional technologies are causing is exactly the reason why they're trying to really minimize, if not eliminating, the use of those. And that's what brings us over there. So again, collateral damage is important not just for the civil market. It's important also for this type of military users and law enforcement. And don't forget as well that all of them are using their own type of drones as well, friendly ones. And they want to continue using them. So if you're going to jam your hostile drone, you're going to jam yourself as well. So that's actually what brings us over there to this type of preferred type of solution by military forces, for example.
Absolutely. I mean, you're speaking my language because, having been in the United States Air Force for 25 years and teaching about the law of war, I think, what maybe the public is seeing happen in Ukraine, they might think is normal. It's not, right? Like bombing civilian structures, targeting civilians is absolutely in violation of the law of war. It's called international humanitarian law. It's comprised mostly of customary international law and treaties like the Geneva Conventions. But Zohar, to your point, of course, the military is concerned about collateral damage. It's called the principle of distinction, and it requires militaries not to damage or target civilian buildings or just regular people that are not involved in the conflict. And so that's what I love about what Enforce Air can do for militaries that up until now maybe they haven't quite had the ability to do. I think it's a critical capability for military forces. And couple that with the MOSA integration capabilities. Right on the money there, Zohar. Just you guys are doing it right. Let's put it that way. But let's continue this talk about the military a little bit, because we talk about the military and that drone threat. It's moving. Military forces are moving. So tell us a little bit how military forces or similar groups that are on the move or mobile, right? Because it's also VIP protection that might be mobile. How can they use Enforce Air while they're on the move? And I think we have a cool slide to maybe at least show this in the military context.
So while you have that over there, we developed multiple type of deployment options. We started with a tactical tripod-based deployment, but we enable our users to really very quickly take this type of deployment and have it deployed on vehicles like what you see right now. And when I say quickly, I mean minutes. And they can really take it from the tripod, have it on a vehicle, and then have what we call a moving bubble. So that's going to protect this type of convoy while it's moving. So that's our second type of deployment. We also have a third one, which is high altitude deployments. So that's in cases where you would like to protect high buildings. And that's another one. And again, the ability to really switch from one deployment to the other is very, very quick. And again, quick means minutes. I mean, part of the fact that we developed that together with our users and the system is really robust, enables us to develop something which is easy to use and enable different types of deployments.
No, that's excellent. And in fact, I want to talk a little bit about, let's just call it your more steady state deployment. In other words, when we think of a VIP or a special VIP protection or a special event, or even a military unit on the move, that military unit is going to have what they call a FOB, right? A forward operating base. Or you mentioned some other market use cases like critical infrastructure, like penitentiaries or schools as examples. What does that kind of, let's call it static deployment? I assume there's a way that an organization or a company can have a persistent, D-Fend Enforce Air solution at their location. How does that work?
Each one of these type of environments has a little bit different type of needs and requirements. Some of them are trying to actually deploy the solution, and what they need is a 24/7 type of protection. We have what we call autonomous mode. You can define what is the parameter that you would like to protect. You define which drones over there are your own type of drones, friendly ones, and everything else going to be considered as a hostile drone, and the system automatically will know how to really autonomously identify those, and if required, mitigate the threat and take control over the drone and land it in a predefined designated safe zone. So all of that can be done automatically, autonomously. On the other side, if you would like to have a man in the loop, you can just decide that, and then decide when to use it and when not to use it, and so on. The bottom line, that really gives our users the ability to decide how to utilize it, when to utilize it, and whether they would like to have someone babysitting the system or the system going to do everything by itself.
Yeah, so what I want to do is maybe in the context of natural disasters, because sadly we've seen a whole host of those lately too. I mean, at least in the United States, the most recent one was Hurricane Ida. And we had some excellent questions on Clubhouse about this, because I know this is also one of your market use cases. And having worked in the Air Force at an incident, command center, as a lawyer advising commanders, I understand how this works. These, post-disaster, response, very complicated, right? So you're going to have federal, a whole host of federal agencies, state, local, tribal, territorial, all in one location. Then you're going to have your looky-loos. You're going to have your legitimate media that maybe have a right to be somewhere, all going on at one time. So when we get, this kind of gets to the heart of this question, Zohar, of the authorized versus unauthorized. As a practical matter, how does this work? And I think we may have a slide that explains a little bit of this.
So what we have is the ability to really create, let's call it a fingerprint for every drone. And it's not a drone manufacturer or a drone type. I mean, even if you and I are going to buy the same type of drone in the same store in the same day, each one of those type of drones is going to have a little bit different type of identifiers over there, which allows us to have a unique identifier for each one of these drones. That enables us to provide to our customers the ability to really decide or to tell the system, this is a friendly one, and And everything which is not friendly, the system going to deal with that as a hostile one. So they create their own type of legitimate drones flying over there. They have the ability to import, export that from different systems to other systems and so on, share that with their other colleagues if required. It is really, really easy to do. And that enables them very quickly, actually, to control this kind of environment in these type of scenarios.
Yeah, so we had talked about this almost like the equivalent of, if you're entering a military base, security forces or military police will have what they call an entry access list, or EAL. So this is almost like a digital, if you will, EAL, where the customer kind of creates that list. Is that kind of a good analogy to explain that?
That's exactly right. I mean, this is really the analogy to use, so the best way to describe that. Thank you.
All right, perfect. And then, John McBride, one of our favorite regulars in Clubhouse from Autel, he asked a really good question. I felt it was worthy of asking here for those that missed that Clubhouse again. He said when they were deploying the Dragonfish around Hurricane Ida as part of that response, unfortunately, he had a handful of them himself that he and his team were using. And then there were other folks that were not supposed to be there that were using Dragonfish. So how does your system distinguish, for example, one Dragonfish model from another?
That's exactly the fingerprinting I mentioned before. The users of the system can just really tell the system, these are the Dragonfish that are allowed to be here. And it's not by model or anything else like that. It's really by the drone itself. So they define, these are the drones, think about it like a serial number or anything like that, which are allowed to be here, and everyone else are not allowed to be here. And that's what the system going to define as hostile ones. And that's when the system going to mitigate this type of drones and only this type of drones.
Yeah, that's key, because certainly when they're all flying up there, they all look alike. And to have that, let's just say, granularity of almost the equivalent of a fingerprint to say that Dragonfish, not that one, I think is significant, especially in a very complex scenario like what we're talking. And Zohar, almost every use case you mentioned is complex. I just think about, even as an example, a football game, a large event like that, where you've got so many electronics going on. You're going to have news media, you're going to have legitimate people there, and then you need to be able to pick out the ones that are just not supposed to be there. So I think that's really key. But that's probably a great segue, Zohar, to this next question, which is, drone, like, technology keeps evolving. People are getting more and more creative in their own garages when it comes to these DIY drones, all different kinds of makes and models being introduced, increasingly autonomous drones. So I know there's this saying like, hey, what if a drone is dark? In other words, what if it's not, it's just doing waypoint to waypoint or something like that? Because we're seeing a lot more of these drone in the box solutions, more autonomy happening. Does Enforce Air are they still able to detect a drone like that?
Bottom line, yes, and let me explain. Many, if not all of the drones have this kind of capability to define a flight path to the drone and let the drone fly by itself from point A to point B and B, C, and so on. But even when they do that, they actually transmit something backwards. Sometimes this is just the location of the drone itself, so you will know where they are. So that's the GPS. Sometimes it's information like what I see, meaning what my camera actually sees over there. And then you see it over there on your remote control. Bottom line, they always communicate somehow. They always send some kind of information. Sometimes this is just keep alive type of beeps, that's all they have. For us, that's enough. So it's really, really hard to have what you call the dark type of drone or a silent one. At the end, the only silent drones available over there are the ones that are, let's call it suicide type of drones. And then you just send them in one way and just drop dead over there. Now, when you send a suicide drone, probably and that's a silent one, then the only way to really deal with that is going to be kinetic solutions. So that's why a layer defense in some of the cases is relevant. We do not protect 100%. We cover 95% of the cases, but this 5% of silent drones, which are suicide drones, that's when you want and need to use the kinetic solutions, a missile. But you want to use them only when you have no other choice.
Yeah, I think I would agree that kinetic options are probably an option of last resort in most instances. So how do you keep up with all these threats, Zohar? I mean, we've been talking about this almost the whole time, like because the technology keeps evolving. How do you keep up with all these threats?
So I think that your question actually needs to be divided to two. So the first one is, how do you update the system? How do you keep the system updated?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
The second one is, how do you know what to update? So let's go to the first one. Again, the easiest way to describe that is like your antivirus. At the end, the ability to keep the system updated all the time and just send you this type of updates is what really makes us unique. We don't really just send a solution which stands like that and that's all. Like your antivirus, we know how to update it and deal with new type of threats all the time. So that's one part of your question. The second one is, how do you know which type of drones do we need to protect and where are the new ones or what are the new ones? Now, for that, again, we have at the end two types of responses. The first one is, we have over 22 nations right now with hundreds of locations where we are being deployed. Using all of that, we actually gather information from them. They just provide us information about new threats they are facing. And once we have that from them, we actually can share that with the entire community we have. So we add this into our library, we add this into our solution, and we just give that to our customers. Another part is with a great team that we have internally in the company, and we just keep track on what everyone is doing over there. And once a new type of threat is being introduced, then we know how to deal with that as well. So that's the long answer to your quick question. Sure.
No, I actually, I'm glad you broke it down this way. And I really only have one more question before I can't believe we're almost at 45 minutes and ending our time together. So how do you, it's one thing to kind of recognize existing threats, right, from all those sources you just mentioned. How do you kind of forecast and project future threats to stay abreast, right, to be looking for that next thing?
It's always going to be a cat and mouse game. And like your antivirus, it's always going to be a new virus and a new type of threat that you need to deal with. This is exactly where we are. Now, what we actually developed is a machine internally over here to deal with these type of new threats. And that's exactly what really brings us ahead of all of this type of market, is the ability to bring a new cat each time that we discover that there is a new mouse over there. So that's what we bring.
I love the cat mouse, the kind of anti-drone, the antivirus of drones. I love all these things. This is great, Zohar. And we are at time, and it's, in a way, it's sad for me, honestly, to end this 3-part series with D-Fend. I've had so much fun speaking with both you and your team. I've learned so much about what you're doing to really help the drone industry, quite frankly, and so many different folks stay protected. So thank you for what you do. It's been a real honor. Before we close out, Zohar, how can people reach you?
I believe that the website is the best way to do that. There are several ways, and the get in touch is a great way for that.
All right, very good. Well, thank you again so much. Appreciate you. Everybody else, we are out here.
Thank you very, very much.